Tonight, I am going to personally attempt to unite quite a few very powerful forces. We'll see how it goes. Just know that I'm going to do my best. This Ascent series has been extremely incredible. If this is your first participation in this series and you're just coming in on Tribe Vibes tonight, just know that we built up to this. So if some of this that's coming across, it becomes a little hazy for you, this means that you may have caught a chalet up here and it'd probably be good to go down to base camp at least after this and take a look at the introduction and write up the degrees so all this makes perfect sense to you. Other than that, just tune your mind into maybe this is science fiction. Get your popcorn together instead of your Palo Santo and your sage, and just really listen to what's coming across. And at minimum, you will be entertained. Earth and the cosmos is indeed a strange thing. So when you come to totally realize what it's all about, either one or two things happen. Either everyone looks at you strange, or you enter into God mode, which is basically that there's maybe a certain level of adoration for what you are capable of doing into the space, because it will reflect on who you become. Now, I know that many have been attracted to this message because the mysteries have been so fond on my lips. We have demystified some of the most tough topics in lifetimes. There are people who search for answers to things that we're talking about and demystifying now, and they have went to their graves still looking for those answers, not being able to necessarily find in the physical plane a teacher and an instructor to guide them on how to gain wealth in the astral life. And truly, life is infinite. This is why we always take a moment, we always take an opportunity to open up the space and to touch and agree. And we do that by raising our two hands. And you'll learn today that indeed these are two hammers, as they're called in the ancient times, light hammers. And as we raise these hands, it's the universal symbol of everlasting life on the physical plane. Our ability to continue to come in and out of this space, and whether we get tired of it or not, whether we get interested in it or not, whatever we decide to do, it will still continue. So we always say on this journey, because if a journey is infinite and sometimes you feel like you're getting a little weathered, to remember you always have this space that's open here to receive everything that is needed. And the reason why we can do that is because this is full spectrum. There's a being here from every part of the cosmos, and we're all here in unity, unified in this agreement that all is self. Now, there are many of these spaces open. We never fail to mention them. It is something that we've grown accustomed to because it shows that we are in the know. Now, beyond a show that we're in the know, let's go for a display. My pulling away from YouTube, because as you know, I'm not necessarily in that public space or on Instagram or many of these places, to me is a show that I'm not actually interested in people just hearing me. What I'm interested in is dialing into the space that is going to allow me to speak for all of us. What I've been able to accomplish is attune my vessel to the cosmos so that synchronicities are so strong, it's like you're seeing breadcrumbs all the way through your experience. And when you grow to learn and recognize this language and this code that this space is speaking, you will not only have the ability to be quick, as we're going to be talking deeper tonight about Tahuti or Thoth or Hermes or quite a few other beings, you're going to learn to be quick because you're going to gain the power and the access to move with the flow between both spaces, the world of the living and definitely not the world of the dead, because what they're doing over there could be everything in our minds but being dead. And this is actually makes it very interesting, because our word dead actually equates to that it's over. But the word dead or Djed means that it's actually just began. So we find that in the world that all of the deep mysteries are encrypted for a reason. It sets out an adventure before us, not if we believe in it, but if we believe in ourselves. And as you continue on the adventure and you start to see yourself, it lures you in to coming into the total awareness of who you are rather than forcing that on you. It's an extreme responsibility to know who you are. You have to constantly manage staying in the gap, staying in between those realms rather than in one or the other. Or when you enter into those realms, operating with a formula to be able to know what you're doing, where you're going, and also where you may be leading others. It's an extreme responsibility to step out in front of another being and to tell them where to go in the path. Imagine if someone asked me for directions and I send them the wrong way. So to put on this mantle, to actually begin to share the vast levels of knowledge is of extreme importance, and it should be handled with extreme care. I feel that because we are all in this space based on resonance, that somehow, some way, that mantle is passed to all of us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you what is necessary, what you left with me to make your path clearer. There are many times where we've left messages to others that we know are going to be in lives that we're going to get into, and we're not necessarily going to remember who we are in that life at first, because we don't go with luggage. We don't go with memories. You cannot go through the memories or the pores of reality with other memories. You have to leave those memories there. So you have to be able to reassemble yourself wherever you go. You have to be able to put yourself together. Like, you know, when someone's going crazy, say, put yourself together. And the more rapid you can do that, the more spaces you can reach. So I know some of y'all are like, okay, give it to me already. Give it to me already. You're going to get it. We're first going to begin with this awareness. Let me back down my lights just a little bit. That feels better. Wow. What I had to do to get to the point of being able to receive this awareness, you know, I definitely had to be very flexible within my consciousness and to make myself, it's like it's all there already. It's all of the knowledge is already in your consciousness, but that's not enough. You must become it. It's like I said, we all have the English language or the alphabet. We know the alphabet and we know a lot of words. And that means then the only thing that remains is really the order of the words. Every day when you say a sentence, the words have to be in a certain order. Imagine if I said, can we to the 5, 6 now? You'd be like, what? What's wrong with you? Like, are you scrambled? What's going on with you? I have to put the words in a specific order in order for that to be comprehensive to what it is that I'm looking to express. All this stuff functions this way. And this is why resonance is so powerful. So the entering of this particular level of the advent on this climb of Mount Meru, which is a climb up the spine, since we're at 8 degrees, and as I agreed that we would be somewhere around 9, there may not even be any more knowledge transmitted after this. It may be some reflection around that time. But that we would make this ascent, and we would come out to the top of ourselves, right into the seat or to the throne to become the lords of our own lives and to accomplish the ascension process once more. Behold, I can take this thing down and I can bring it back up. If you want to take your notes, behold, I can take this thing down and I can bring it back up. Behold, we saw the ladder going up and down. You're going to know what this really means. You're going to know what these sacred sayings, these sacred symbols are really, really about tonight. Now, it starts off with this code that you're seeing here on the screen, which is a code that was so eloquently cracked, showing the resemblance between the tetragrammaton, which we've often seen on any kind of chart that you see in where they're going to depict all the angels and God and any Masonic tracing board, anything that represents spirituality. I don't even have to show the pictures here. You'll find it everywhere, that if you look at the top and you look at the center, you will see this word. And this word is known as the hidden word, that no one can pronounce it. And that's a metaphor within itself, because the reason why it can't be pronounced is you have to be it. It's not just to say something, you have to be something. And we talked about how your thoughts and what you say have to match with what is in your heart. And we call that HSM, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, is the way that you accomplish magic. That means that you're in. There's no doubt. You're in the know. So what this in the know is about this code and how its variant gives us the word Yehudi. Okay? Now, it's important for me to mention that the reason why we have such a schism in the knowledge and in the awareness today is because there was a metaphorical action that took place that governed the levels of power and the nation, the levels of power that each nation could reach. And how that was done is that there was a unified code, a word. Okay? And that word created everything. And when it got around to creating languages and people started using languages, it created one universal language that everything spoke. But in the process of the awareness of what was going on with, let's say, younger beings with a large amount of power, there was a decree that the knowledge would be measured. And you would get your allotment of the knowledge. And this started off with nations, that each nation carried a part of the code. This is what is metaphorically said in the Bible as, there's a scripture and you're going to see a lot of how you have to read between the lines, how you have to already know the theme so that you can follow the theme. So that way you can learn what the mystery is, because the mystery is going to be shrouded in conflict. The mysteries defend themselves in conflict, because the moment the mind goes into conflict, it blocks and it shrouds the mysteries. So all secrets will be shrouded within what you would see as conflicts. So when there's stories of conflict, the stories of the mysteries is being revealed. So there appears a grand scene of conflict in the Old Testament against gods and men. And some do not see this necessarily, but it's very direct that according to the Old Testament, that a higher God, which we'll term today Bulel, decreed that with human beings having the word, knowing their possibility, knowing their potential, and knowing how to create life, that with them possessing this power, that there would be even problems in the higher heavens because of the lack of awareness in which these beings were using this power. It's like there's an idea sometimes from us that if we can all ascend to heaven, and then the gurus say, and then we'd have to build cities there. Meaning that we would then as a collective just take what we have there, because who we are only transforms when we transform ourselves. So this is the space that we're supposed to be based on how we're carrying ourselves. And in this space, there have been many decrees. There have been many teachers. There have been masters. There have been good teachers. There have been strict teachers. There's been agreeable teachers. There's been disagreeable teachers. There's those who thought the lesson should be taught this way. There's those who thought it should be taught that way. But in this realm of power, there was a decree to reduce the power of the human being. And this comes out as, let us confuse them by dividing their tongues. And what this really means is, let us give each nation only a piece of the word. This will, in effect, disempower them because they will not be working together. And when they finally learn the true lesson of existence, it would admit that they had come all back together and given their piece so that they could see the whole picture. And this is what we have to do tonight. This means that every single race, color, creed, film, and mark of division must be demystified, must be ingested, i.e., I ate it, and then it must be transmuted. Because I can tell you, no one will get in and out of this space unless they can unite the mystery within. This is symbolically any conflictive force, if you want to say male, female. It's interesting because we have actually really made a lot of progress on this act of coming back together. Because the male and the female are actually, in many cases, still greatly in love with each other. And I'm also talking about even the depth of the soul, any kind of polarity, the soul, the spirit, light, dark, anything that has that dual component flirts with each other. And this builds energy and potential. And in the event they come together, it creates life. That's how babies get here. That pattern cannot be replicated, and it is extremely powerful. If one was just focusing on that, they would see that even all these mysteries that I'm explaining today are just that. So we went all the way around. We fully circumferenced the Cabal, which is a language. The language, as they say, well, Hebrew is the Cabal. Every language is a Cabal, but the Cabal or the cable is a world Cabal. It's a world serpent, as they call it. Ouroboros, a serpent eating its tail. This means that the A, if you may in English, must connect to the Z. But in this case, if you expand it out over the entire world, all the language must come together. And it's very interesting because today we get an opportunity to see very clearly that there has been a force that has been doing that across time. And this force is not just one person at all. It fills many beings with knowledge and wisdom and potential. So when I say anything about names tonight, even instead of seeing them as separate beings, learn to see them all as the same being at different stages, at different times, looking at things from a different perspective. Each life, coming into each life, initiating themselves from scratch into how do you see it this life? Now that you were born in New Jersey. How do you see it this life? Now that you were born in Germany and went to Canada at 3 years old. How do you see it? Because eventually, as you keep reincarnating into these points of light, you're going to get the complete picture. And when you start doing that, you'll learn how to unify your energy, and it's in your consciousness matching with your heart. Okay, so how this is turned on, what I'm talking about tonight, you don't got to go and grab some weird green crystal. You don't got to say some words millions of times. You only need to be completely sure about what is being said. And if it takes you to do all of that, then so be it. Because that is humanity's history. That all of what they've created to make them fervent is to reinvigorate them about life. So when we even create stories and we empower those stories, we do that to give us more joy and more purpose in life, in infinity. Imagine if someone gets depressed in infinity. Like, when would this depression stop? It would just keep going on. So the reason why we have these mysteries is to always keep us excited about all of what we're capable of doing. So very clearly, the language split is actually the splitting of the power. And until we bring the word back together, which is the lost tribe. Remember, there's a few things that are lost: the lost tribe and the lost word. And we would know that if all the tribes didn't get back together, the human tribe, they will wander around as if they are lost, which is what we're seeing now. So this means that the advent of this awareness, just that we're speaking on it, it means that it's already present within the space. And if you got that email, what I said was the running title of tonight's show is The Return of the Djedi, rather than The Return of the Djedi, right? Which is still part of the word that can be used, but it's very powerful to understand that there's also some people here that know about all of what I'm going to explain to you tonight. And maybe they've done it in their own way to try to explain it to you, but it looks like to me that they've only been attempting to confuse it and feed on parts of it because it's you. Feed on parts of this idea of being a goddess or this idea of being a hero, but use that only for really more control, more fame, more fortune, rather than to relieve the brothers and sisters of their burdens by giving them the power that's necessary to carry it. To many people, 100 pounds is not heavy. 50 pounds is not heavy. 1,000 pounds is not heavy to certain types of beings. So if I give you the strength, those no longer become weights. But I feel that in the reality now, because of the level of depression, that if some beings don't get power to lift up this canopy, I don't even want to go into what may happen because I already am projecting that it's not. My advent here is simply to, every time it gets turned up in the reality externally with things that are adverse to this power and wisdom, then we turn it up too. And we're not giving up. So eventually all forces of ignorance will be flooded with knowledge, wisdom, and light. And this is how. So we know then, let's go on this journey and let's look at how all of this symbolism and all of these beings that I'm going to explain are all the same thing. Because in truth, there's only two different things going on. And once you learn how to unite those forces, then everything is the same. But until then, there's only really two things. So you'll start seeing how everything connects. Why? Because even the things that you are most adverse to, because it all came from one word, that all means that it would eventually come back together. It's like what I told you about in math. That if I just go back to your grandmother and your grandmother's grandmothers, your grandmother's grandmothers, your grandmother's grandmothers, I'm going to eventually get back all the way to the point where there's no more division. And then I'm going to be there standing in front of an androgynon, a hermaphrodite, not split. This is actually a point that takes place in the gestation inside of the womb. Since all there really is the cycles of 9 months, genealogy, the 9 of all of the whole cycle, because that's the cycle. It's like there's 9. In that process of the 9, if you understand the gestation of a child, the child is genderless. It's only until they reach a certain part, the final part of the creation process, that they start to gain the actual gender of what they're going to split into the physical reality. But there's a prolonged process where they are eunuchs unto the Lord, meaning that this child is an angel. It's genderless, not having a sex. So this becomes interesting because if we look at the stages and cycles that a child is in the stomach, it is also the stages and the cycles that a human soul is going through the eternal experience, if you may. So there was a time that you were in the garden, in paradise. All of the food and everything that you needed to sustain yourself was being brought to you and provided to you. This is our mother's womb. This is also symbolically that on the planet, there wasn't much moving. Okay? Follow the knowledge here. There wasn't much moving. The waters were still. Okay? And just like you see them drop a drop in a drop of water and it vibrates from there, that's what life is. Life is vibration. You know all this, but let me walk you through this process. So when there's no vibration, then there's no moving and everything is still. So I want you to imagine the world still for a moment, where there's no waves in the ocean. It appears that what would happen is all the water would rise over the land. And if you existed here, you would be something aquatic. That's why we find all of the ancestors seem to be aquatic. They're like water dragons or water serpents or water, whatever you want to call them. The deep. Stories of Tiamat. Stories of, the zoo bird. Ancient stories about large behemoth. Large sea beings. And if we can think of this time, even before they would arrive, we see it motionless and not moving. So the first level of power is to realize to bring in power, you must first bring in a moon. Okay? Now, it comes out that the entity that we're going to be talking about the most tonight, which fills all that are wise, some may call it Thoth, Tahuti, Hermes, Wooten. The names go on and on and on. In every true spiritual system is associated with the moon. Thoth is associated with the moon. Tahuti is associated with the moon. Because something takes place also in history that I've been able to track specifically about what some would call agreeable or disagreeable. But at times they can't tell you what was the disagreement. And so you need to know why would what are we agreeing or disagreeing to as an all-powerful first magnitude original being? What happened? And when you put that question inside of your mind with pure thought, it will respond to you and it will say, change. Change. See, if you notice when you go back to any of the ancient ancestral stuff, they don't want you to change anything. We are almost out of that epoch completely where we have great-great-grandparents or some culture, some indigenous tribe to tuck in with, to where they'll show you, you sit where you're supposed to sit. We don't do nothing around here if you don't get told to do. Everything here is in place. They even put stones to mark the place. This is where it goes on here. You will not change this. Do you understand that? Like, it's the same thing that you see systems like there's the Mayan system where they pinpoint like what day you were born on, and then they tell you what you're going to do for the tribe. And if you don't want to do that, that's not an option, because no one is to change the order of what these things say to do. Now watch this, because you're going to get and catch how all of this starts popping off on earth. Because you literally have a being that says, don't change anything. To change anything would be blasphemous. You would blaspheme the name of the Lord, which means if you blaspheme, it means to change something from what it is, right? Because these are how codes are revealed. They say to blaspheme is to represent God in a way that God does not, or should not be represented, right? So this means in a coded way, blasphemy is to take anything from the earth and to change it into something else. This is how it begins to pop off. Now, right away, if you want to understand the relationship here between the changing and the non-changing, it is very similar to the mother and her son. So, because sometime in this story, you'll be just wondering, well, why doesn't the non-changing original powerful being just squash everything? And it's because it's related. So, give me 1 second here. Let me get my lines cleaned up. I muted my line here. Let me see it real quick. Let me see what my permissions are here. Here's some spotlights. If you want to do your, if you want to change back to gallery view, you can do so. Okay. So I'm going to give this to you one more time, because if you don't get this, you'll create a devil again. The only two forces are changing and never changing. Still unmovable, as we already told you about. Or, man, let's get the flow going on here. Let's get some new stuff happening here. Let's change a couple things, see what we get. Let's go a little bit further on the journey. Let's all of that, my friends, is called thoth. To change or to transmute something. This is known as well, you'll see that you could never figure out if it was a man or a woman. That's why I kept telling everybody, I was like, listen, I'm finding evidence that somehow the Messiah was also a female. How does this work? I'm seeing it. I can't tell you what's going on, but you still clearly see that the Messiah was also a male. How does this work? This could be so confusing for an initiate looking to become an adept. And now today, I'm going to demystify all of this. It's absolutely incredible. I'm excited. I know some of you are like, get on with it already. So here we go. So as I said before, the only way that we're going to find the lost word, the only way that we're going to unite the lost tribe is if we unite the mysteries. The mysteries are very akin to the language itself, because the mysteries are really Kabbalah, their language. And that's why Thoth was a scribe, attributed with the first level of writing and introducing writing. Now remember, this is the energy. So it's the energy that is moving through multiple beings. Like, let's create a language and let's write this down to preserve this knowledge and this experience, because it looks like what's happening is that, you know, we're leaving the space. We're going to leave the space. And we need to leave records for those to come, our children, so that when they wake up to a certain level of their power, they will know how to read this. Symbolically, this came out as what we call today the emerald tablets. I believe this is called the Smaragdus tabula, which is actually not anywhere near the one that's in publication except for the first page. But this particular writing is a awareness that there was a sisterhood and a brotherhood, or a beings that held a certain level of knowledge, that saw that this knowledge was going to need to be stored in the physical space. And they wrote this knowledge down. This is metaphorically even the 10 commandments, if you may, but not about commanding. It's about, actually, it is about commanding. It's about how to command nature, but not the one that you got in the book. Those aren't the 10 commandments. We're talking about a book that was written in a way where it would be impenetrable to fire, impenetrable to all the 4 elements. So it could not be blown away. It could not be burned. It could not be sunk, right? And it could not be buried. So knowledge was brought into the space in order to allow us to be able to bring that back into play. But the key is that we are the knowledge. So even if you burn us, even if you try to blow us away, even if you try to bury us, we will still burst forth with the knowledge at some point, because the knowledge is within. So this is the time for us. I also wanted to mention timing is so exact that we began this build last week and we got into this hermetic symbolism and this alchemical symbolism. And then we crossed into 555, right? Which was May the 5th, 2021, right? And on that day, we saw, because that's Mercury, which is what's called commerce. I'm going to show you this in a moment. I'm going to show you how this all ends up panning out and why all the symbolism we have is like this. But I just want you to pay attention to that. In the word commerce, Mercury's name is in commerce. So Mercury has a lot to do with commerce. So it's important to know, well, who is Mercury anyway? But on 555, as I told everyone, that the new money would have something to do with ether, because spiritually we're discovering, or we're in the advent of realizing that we have an astral body, or that we're etheric. And we watch Ethereum begin its bull run, as it's called. And now the alt season has began. But this is symbolism. Even when they tell you Doge is going to the moon, since this all has to be related to commerce, you even see today by the end of this build why Hermanubis and Anubis, or God, the god of the underworld, or the god of the moon, is a dog. It's the opposite side of the Thoth. Thoth's opposite side is Anubis, right? So then you see that there is a very occult connection with commerce that is precise. If it doesn't exist anywhere else, it exists here. But the first commerce is about our body, because first of all, as you've seen, I've demystified how they modeled the dollar or the taller after the human body. You also have to realize that when you go somewhere and you pay something, what do they have to give you back? Change. And we use that word for a reason, because the God of change is not the God of unchanging. This is where the conflict is: a change and an unchange, a ladder going up and a ladder going down. And unless you understand how to operate both, you will not unlock your body, because your body is the caduceus staff. The caduceus staff, as I'll teach you tonight, is God, which is you. It is God. It's not something Hermes is holding in his hand. It's like once you reveal the mysteries, all you can do is unreveal the mysteries. And this is where the world is at right now. It's in the unrevealing the mystery point, because it's confusing all the mysteries. This is the body, and we know it's the body, but we keep being re-altered with conflicts. And thus we don't actually get what's being expressed by our ancestors, saying you must raise the Djed if you expect for the Jedi to return. If you want the Messiah to return, this is the Messiah. And I'm going to show you how every single Messiah figure always had the same symbolism. So let's go. We have let me just get it, zero in here. Okay, here we are. So no moon, no change. Okay, because no moon, no waves. Right? We take a moon off the earth. The water doesn't move. Everything will become stagnant and it will begin to spoil. And then there will be a stank and it will decay because vibration is heat. Okay? Kundalini is heat. Right? But on all levels, even to the deepest level, Kundalini is heat. It's a sun god. You see what I mean? And they used to call this the serpent. The risen serpent. The word Kim is a reference to the serpent people. Okay, this is that uncomfortable part of the whole thing because they have a Catholic program running from the bull. See, because there are those who are aligned with Bull-El. Remember the unmoving concept. These are oligarchies. They don't want anything to change. They want everyone to be born in the state that they're in. And as long as they're the wealthy ones, then things should stay like that. So they'll use the Hermetic principles when they fall out of power. But when they come into power, they switch to Bull-El where they don't want any changes to happen. Do you see how someone can be like that? Like when you think about that, it's like, do you see how the original could be like, man, don't touch this. You see, it's good. We all good. Do not vibrate. And this is why the mythical serpent in the garden is none other than Thoth, is none other than Hermes, the emerald green serpent with knowledge, known as Ningrashita, the Lord of the good tree, meaning that there were two trees in the garden. These are symbolically to the two that are twining up the pole. And there was a tree of wisdom and knowledge. And that wisdom and knowledge was given to woman, which was to give her a womb. And when she gained that knowledge, she tried to give that to man. Okay? But to create life would be to create vibrational heat and force. And when they did that, they became like gods. Their eyes were open to Kundalini. And that alerted Bull-El. And Bull-El was like, what's good? I thought we said no changing. So this is also why many of these beings are sometimes seen, because it's an energetic thing. We're trying to dial into something as changelings or shapeshifters. They shift frequencies because the whole thing is about shifting frequencies. If you can create change, that Caduceus staff is indeed like a tuning fork, but far more powerful because it can emit all sorts of frequencies on different scales. And because the power revealed within just the first page of the Emerald Tablets is only about resonance and how things that are alike attract each other and how you want to go around things that you like. And when you know what the power is around that, that means that you can literally begin to just emit certain frequencies to attract things because they like that. It sounds so basic, but people are so far off of it because they can't see how, when you don't know how to attract something into your space, it's not there yet. But as you, just like a bird, when you lay out nice bird seed, birds come. Because they are attracted. They have resonance to that. And this is where the power is. Okay? So I'll read here the Greek Hermes just to clarify the connection between the moon and Thoth, which is all of the deities we're going to be explaining tonight. The Greek Hermes was identified as the Egyptian Thoth, much as he was with the Roman Mercury, Dionysus with the Egyptian Osiris, Zeus with Ammon, etc. And Thoth, as the inventor of writing and patron of scribes, was a lunar god, since the lunar cycle was an early means of measuring time. Right? It's Thoth with the measuring thing. This is why the Masons try to come in, the Freemasons try to come in and just take that knowledge about alchemy, because the measuring tool that Thoth is holding in his hand, which is the square or the L, and then the compass or the circle or the straight line in the circle is the same thing they've adopted. And then they take over the symbol. But this lunar power is about measuring time and timekeeping. Okay, because if you don't know what time it is for a powerful being as a time traveler, you don't know where to get back into. Time is a frequency. So with the creation of the moon gave the ability not only for tides to come in, that is time with a D, right? So it gave the potential of all the ties or the connecting together. But this connecting together could not come before things were split. This is what the mysteries teach, that once what we're calling man and woman were in the same body. And it was Thoth that chose to split them into two, to divide the power so that it could become aware of itself through itself to create change. So basically to split a male from a female and then to put them into a physical space. They would descend into a physical space. They would no longer be in the garden or the time where they knew about their androgynous state. They would come into this division. And this is how the world was created as we know it. The world is a word. So as we keep going, we find, as I'm going to finish reading, Thoth had in even earlier times assimilated Jah, an older divinity of the moon, to become Jathoth. For both Greeks and Egyptians, this syncretic mixing of gods was perfectly valid, and compound gods such as Zeus, Ammon, Ra gained broad popularity. That's alchemy. When you blend gods, it's like, see, this statue that we're seeing, or this symbol that we're seeing is of a god. You are the god, but they blend gods. You see what I mean? That's the next stage, is formulas. This is like making babies, right? Like you can mate two different people together and get traits of both of them. That's alchemy. Okay? At its truest extent, it's not these vessels of glass and the monatomic gold. It wasn't any of that first. That's the derivatives of it. The key and the power is to be able to create. And when we can create, we can already see the poles of creation. And then when we know what those two poles are, or those two great snakes, then we know how to charm them, if you may, to get them to come back together to create power. So the interesting thing that we are is we're not just that. That's what the change was about. That's what the vision was, is to create something beyond the mother and the father, or beyond Zeus and Maya. This is why the story of Hermes, again, is a metaphor, is that Hermes was the child of Zeus and Maya. Zeus being a sky god from outer space, basically, Bull-El representers. And then Maya, just Maya, earth, Ma. And their child was Herm, meaning Herm is a hermaphrodite. Their first child was not a male or a female, but both. And we still have that going on to this very day. It's very, very minuscule, but just that it happened shows us that it happens. And also that many of the life forms that are here on the planet are actually hermaphrodites. So when even scientists, whether they were genetic scientists or ancient scientists, were looking at many of these hermaphroditic beings and to be able to self-create or to self-generate, there became a pursuit to find that, since as above, so below, that somewhere in us there would be the ability to regenerate, to basically create light from within. And this would bring us into being like gods. That's activation of Kundalini. But it is to bring two forces back together. And so that creates the path. That's the path that stretches out before you. That's zigzag, zig, the entwining serpents. You see what I mean? So as we keep going, we'll finish this. So although Hermes' thought would have been a tautology, as they were regarded as the same, Hermes got the secondary form of Hermanubis, mixing the Greek psychopomp with the Egyptian protector of bodies and tombs. And it's because, metaphorically, since Herm's father is from heaven and mother is from her earth, it has access to heaven and earth and the space in between. And the space in between would be where you go in transitions through life. So when you quote unquote die, you go into the space in between. In that space, Thoth is in that space. Anubis is in that space, ready to guide across the level of Styx. Ningrashita, as is mentioned in the Sumerian text, is holding a human soul kind of behind him as he's introducing, or she's introducing, this soul to God, or the next space that the soul is about to go into. See, because it's an infinite existence. So when you go into the next space, it's kind of like a quick court hearing happens. Thoth steps in as your representative, as a teacher, a good teacher, and says, look, I know he cut up this life. He's good, though. He's got this. It's only going to take him a few more lives. So imagine your teacher speaking on your behalf that sees your potential to the judge. Now, what this means is not necessarily an entity, but a frequency that's going to determine what happens to you, where you go, where you incarnate, what's going to happen next. That's judgment. So Thoth is there speaking on your behalf, introducing you to the God of the next dimension, as every dimension has a God, which is basically what fills the entire space. You get it? Are we there? Are we there? Can we keep going? Okay, let's keep going. This is clear. At least it's clear to me, but I've been on this for 4 days. This is write myself down. So remember, let's rewind here when things never change. So equally as you can be on that unchangeable side, ready to exact vengeance upon anyone who's out of line. See, because when you decide to make a change, guess what? In that process, until the change is complete, it's ugly. It's a monster. Look at the baby as the baby's in the cycle. And how you recognize Phi, even though it's clearly there in the spiral. If you were the mother and you were the creator, maybe you wouldn't think it was so ugly. But if we put this thing on the table, you're going to be like, what is that, a predator? Is that one of them alien babies? Meaning that if you took a baby out and you just saw that baby as it was, it's not going to be out of the womb, and it wasn't done or complete with this process, it wouldn't be something you would be like, oh, wow, let's hold it. You'd be like, it's a monster. Look, it doesn't even have eyes. So all of the things that you keep seeing in the reality that are so monstrous to you is because they're not done yet. They're still in Hellas, or the alchemical oven, right? And there's paradise for them. So as we keep going here, just remember that it's easy to jump on one of the sides. It's easy to, once you get your thing straight, to not want to change anything. While anything that is subject to everything being straight from you, meaning it's good for you, but it's not for it, it's going to want to change that condition. So these are the two forces, and these forces wrestle against each other. And in that wrestling, it creates power. It creates force. The magus uses that power and force. And this is why all of alchemy is continuously being formed on the earth by the money changers, basically utilizing the alchemical power to put people in conflict and master the world through the same force that works within to create micro realities for themselves that have micro suns. Micro levels of power in their own little nucleus, but not enough to power us all, because we would have to be disempowered for that to work. You see what I mean? So this is why this knowledge is all you need. And then to turn it into wisdom. So let's clarify really quick so that way we don't lose this train here. So this means that Thoth is the tetragrammaton, because the tetragrammaton is Kundalini. Kundalini has a field of torsion around the body. It causes an energetic field around the body, right? So all this is the same thing, but yet your favorite occultist seems to not be aware of this. It's a work in process, but what some of the things that are being done now with occultism and bringing people into knowledge is monstrous, because it's not complete. When you know the mysteries, it's easy to see someone who doesn't. And this is why I was saying there's still a demarcation of those who are coming to learn versus those who just want to teach for the status of teacher. And this is what you had in history. You had people that just wanted to be worshiped for the knowledge, not interested to giving application to others. So thus, they didn't unlock the knowledge themselves. They barred the door from themselves, and we'll call them the money changers. But before I get to that, let's make this correlation again between Yahweh, or YHVH, Yahweh, and Yahuda, which means which is where we get the word today, Jew. And to understand why those that are calling themselves Jews and are not are basically increasing the lost tribe phenomena, because they are locking in knowledge that they stole from Kemet, as we keep talking about, because it's a very key fundamental here. YHVH, or the tetragrammaton, or the ability to power up, to implode the pyramid itself, the great thing, the thing that powers the great pyramid or the great temple. The human being is the great pyramid. The unit in it that powers it is called Yahweh, or YHVH, Jehovah, okay, which all means what? Kundalini. This is why it's lost. The Father has lost the Son in this case. The unmovable. This is why there's always this step down in everything that you see. You see the dollar there, and it's more valuable. You can imagine that dollar as the unchangeable. And then there's change, which is the other one that you get. The dollar is straight, right? You get a circle dollar? Not unless it's in a coin. So the coin is the change. The dollar is the unchangeable. See, they would know both components because they play both sides. They play Bullel and they play Hermes and Thoth. And actually, it's not two sides. It's two sides because Hermes is the gateway to the underworld, which is the mother, Maya. Right? We know that Maya is the underworld because in the Hindu tradition, they tell us that in the lokas, that one of the lokas is powered by Maya. We got the Mayans telling you that they're in the Toltec dreaming, in the Aztecs, etc., saying culture that they're into Toltec dreaming, which is to be able to traverse the great serpent or mother through the underworld. So mom is already on the other side. Do you understand? So where Hermes is in the flow, in between. Okay, that's what gives you the ability to be quick. And so access to both of these worlds is what we want to clarify here so that we understand that this is what the left and the right hemisphere of the brain is even doing. The right hemisphere is access to the astral plane. The left hemisphere is the access to the physical world. Accessing any of those completely puts you completely into that state. Okay, we've revealed that. That's the Gateway series. That was our last build. So now that we know Djedi is clearly who? Tahuti. So we know Jew is actually a reference to Herm, the lost one, the lost word. Okay? So Djedi is also Jedi. Okay, that's the other word. There is a priesthood of the Jedi in Kemet. Okay, so that's not Star Wars. That's a priesthood and priestesshood. This is hermaphroditic, meaning that you got men doing it and you got women doing it. Just like you have men right now trying to activate Kundalini and you have women right now trying to activate Kundalini. And in the event that they succeed, they have activated the other pole of themselves. Okay. So this is why you couldn't say that the Messiah was any color. First of all, you couldn't say that they were any sex. More importantly, because it's a code. It's a creed. To be a herm, to be an alchemist, to be a thoth is to be in an energy, a vibration, in a frequency. That's why the college is invisible. Because it fills all spaces. It's here, knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence that has connected through time because time was measured by Thoth. Okay, so this is an energy that knows how to move through time. This is why you get this idea of a thrice born. Someone who can come in and out of the world 3 times. And then you get this idea of raising oneself from the dead and coming back to life, right? So now you get it that when we say raising the Djed, what we're talking about is that the Kundalini force moves up and it moves down. It doesn't just move up. It has to move up and it has to move down. So thus you would have to gain the power of going up and down, which would make you a Mashiach. Okay, you had tapped in to the awareness of activating Kundalini. So you have to be very clear here that this is not about a male or it's not about a female. Now, just to show you that linguistically, you cannot really count on right now so much of what people think they know because there's too much to know. Meaning that because writing started way before we did in this life, there's so many books, there's so much in language that has been created to try to traverse language completely. You would need a time machine or you would need a master code. This is why the master code is a time machine. So I'll say that very clearly. So much has been written, which has been what is done. So it be written, let it be done. Everything that has been done has been marked or scribed. Everything that you do, there's a vibration or a frequency that is taken account of for it. And because of that, it gives this vibration and frequency also to travel through. And that vibration and frequency looks like a coil or looks like a writhing snake. It is a life field or life force or energy. And so for you to be able to pass through that means you would gain the ability to go through the past, present, and future. But without that, to try to understand this knowledge just by reading through books, you'll be reading forever. There is an inspiration that takes place. Even to this today or this week, when I put this build together, there was no place for me to go to find some knowledge that I could talk about. Like, what's up? Who could I go and tune into their channel, listen to them, and then come and inspire everyone else with that? Everywhere that I went, or every page that I went to, like some of my normal pages that I check on, let's see what Pierre's talking about. Let's see what this person's talking about. There was nothing new that I could really say that we haven't already covered all of that. But when I go within, there's just the whole thing right there. So I'm just saying it's like an inspiration that leads you to all of these secrets. And then it's got to do it so precisely because there's so much knowledge. Now watch this. I'm going to talk about all of the names of Thoth here in just a second, but remember that one of the names is Ningrashida. This is the Thoth inside of the Sumerian tradition. So what I just want to show here very briefly is how the words and the language is power. And because we don't really know all the languages because we're so busy within our own nation. Like what we think is just our nation. So we only speak our language. Okay. And this allows us to not see the obvious, which is basically how things connect. So if you spoke, I don't know, Canadian and someone else spoke Mandarin, there's an identity that comes with those languages, and you have a tendency, unless you're just a linguist, to not look into other languages to understand the similarities to pick up on the story. So if you notice here, you have Judea, okay, which is literally the term that is given for Yehudi, Judea, who ruled to the north of Mary. Let me just show you how, if we skim this, you would just all of a sudden see things that would speak out to you and let you know that something else is going on here. Once again, we have a deity leading another deity by hand to another deity. This is what I was saying before about Thoth, who's here in the center, is leading this person into the next world by first introducing them to the God. And you find this in the ancient tradition also. You also find that as you keep drilling into this, here it is right here. And this is the only thing that I want to point out. The votive steel of Judea, ruler of Lagash, to the temple of Ningersu, Judea being led by Ningrashida into the presence of the deity who is seated on the throne. Okay. Now here's that depiction. And here is again why you have a Bible. Because every single entity in the Bible is a horned serpent. Let us look at Moses for 1 second, or Moose, as the real name is, which means serpent. The word moose in give me a quick second. Let me find the linguistic reference. M-U-S, moose in is the Sumerian word for serpent. Okay. You see when they bring it back to you, you see these two rays on the top of Moses' head, right? Those are horns, okay? Because Moses is an emulation of Thoth, a savior, okay? And we showed that before, that it was Moses raising up the Nehushtan in front of everybody because it is, again, another savior. So any savior figure, including Jesus, is none other than Thoth. Okay. So once again, you see here Moses with the horns. If you can see it barely on the top there, I was trying to open that up, but it looks like the page is not loading. You will find several of these, that there will be an awareness or a hidden occultism that keeps showing Moses with horns, because it's the symbolism of the horned snake or the horned serpent, which is the awareness that the Kundalini, when going up the spine, would then go into the crown chakra, making a crown of thorns or a crown of horns. The 1,000-petal lotus would open up, or in light, and then the being would wear a crown. And that crown, as we know from a metaphysical level, is an interface into the other world. It allows you 1,000 eyes to see into the next realm. And as I said before, it unites you with Ma, which you would call Gaia in this case, and allows you to plug into nature's mainframe in order to begin to perceive the next stage. Because they're saying that it's so interesting that humans would even think that they could comprehend the Most High with thought. It would be like you trying to fit the ocean inside of a cup. You need to plug into another interface that has more of a relationship. And because Maya and Zeus have a relationship, the process of the alchemical transformation is to connect. And that is symbolically to connect with your mother. That's what the mysteries show. That's why you see Mary holding Jesus, who's none other than who? Thoth, Hermes. Or let's break it down and build it back up really quick again by linguistics. Ningrashita, Nabu, another savior god. Tammuz, Damuzi, the savior in its risen state, the savior in its underworld state. Thoth, Anubis, or Thoth above Anubis. This is the root to cannabis. Cannabis is a gateway to the underworld. Okay, cannabis, that's why people think it puts them into the subconscious world. The cult of Anubis or cannabis is a real cult. Okay, and as you can see, it's got quite a few members, even if they are rookies and don't know what they're doing in the underworld. We have Ningrashita, we have Nabu, Enki. Enki is Cain. Okay, here comes the big bomb. Hermes is Cain. Cain changed things. Cain is the coin, or Kahin is the name, right? The first artificer or the architect, right? The rebellion to God. No one was more rebellious than Cain. Why? Because Cain changed things. Cain was the mythical serpent in the garden, believe it or not. And what happens is the introduction to how to change things, or smithing, actually is what created the variance of human beings and the animals that we see today. The ability to blend certain plants together and animals together. This was to change the original. So you can see why there is a conflict, but you can also see why this is family, meaning that this is why there's not an utter destruction and a blotting out, because it can't happen. It's like, what more than to put some conflictive forces together that never end? When they kill each other, they come back to life. This is why it would lead to one becoming psycho or being mad if they are not able to unite these powers within and wake up to the true mysteries. Thoth, Hermes, Hercules, all Greek. Hercules too. Woden, Norse. Quetzalcoatl, Mesoamerican. Viracocha, Incan. Merlin, Celtic. Sarama in Indra, which is Hindu. Zoroaster in Persian. Idris, the green one. How did we miss it? The Emerald Tablets, the first translations of the Emerald Tablets are all in Arabic, right? So that's why I said this Emerald Tablets of Dorial and all the rest of the Emerald Tablets that I see on Amazon, man, I don't know how Thoth is feeling about this. I just have to make sure it's on wax in this because, see, if you understand, let me pronounce the word correctly. Smaragdus. Okay, this is a weird word. Esmeralda, when it comes out into Latin. Smaragdus is emerald. Okay, the first emerald mines. Let's take a look. Emerald mines, a Colombian Trapache emerald. Emeralds in antiquity were mined in Egypt at locations on Mount Smaragdus. Okay? The reason why we're zooming into that really briefly is, remember when I kept saying, hey, guys, it seems like that these elements are actually really beings somehow, maybe even angels of some sort. These crystals, these minerals, they're not what we think. This silver, this seems to be correlating to these actually being real beings as we understand beings. You know, we're always still trying to grasp it, right? Everything here is alive, but we're still trying to determine what's really alive, how it's alive, if it really thinks like we do. And I'm telling you, the power is evident. Now, it's clear that if Thoth wrote the emerald tablets, it was because Mount Smaragdus, which is in Egypt, was obviously where they say the whole mountain. Thoth carved the entire mountain with knowledge. You see it here? That on the bottom right, do you feel that power of Smaragdus or whatever emerald really is? Probably some green dragon. And then when the whole thing happened in Kemet with the mining of they weren't mining emerald. The emerald was, when something is in the ground and it's a large concentration of it, it is is what I'm saying. That's where we keep having this dissociation. We're like the emerald tablets is the God. So even if you had the actual real emerald tablets, you would be holding the body of a hermetic brother or sister from ancient times. And then when it moved to Columbia, because Columbia is column. Column is, as we'll see, that a herm is a pillar. A phallic symbol is a herm. And so a column is also a herm because it is also a pillar. And this is why in the U.S. they use Columbia as the goddess, because Columbia is a code for herm. Because it's a male and a female. It's not just a male. This is how the dualistic folks keep getting thrown off. They get bucked off of this every time because the dualistic mind says, immediately, is it a male or a female? Is this my mom or who's it? My daddy? Daddy, is that you, Darth Vader? And it's just like all this conflict. It's like, I mean, are you telling me that? And this is hiding us from the mysteries, but the mystery is ourselves, right? So you can see this thing is fascinating because it's rolling out like this. I'm like, yo, this is wild because it's only a matter of time. With the code now in the mind, it's hacking Zion's mainframe. You see what I mean? That's what they tell you in the Matrix, that they're looking for a code. And now that they're inside of Morpheus's mind, who's the god of dreams, that they can keep hacking for this code. But see, now everything is a dualistic. It's Smith versus Neo versus. So you're never going to get what they're saying until you realize that they're saying that the Smith, who is Cain or Herm, is in basically the mine or the cave, attempting to hack the code to Zion to open up the mainframe. But when each one of those is a conflictive force, the only thing you would be able to do is empower Bullel, who's a bully. There is a force on the dimension that is bully-like. There is no forgiveness. There is no change. There's only destruction and blotting out of anything that wants to change things. This is what creates that conflict. But see, that exists just in the space. That's the best way to describe the forces. But the alchemist, having both heaven and earth within, having both heat and cold, having both wet and dry, and through heat and cold and wet and dry, all things can be created.